The title of my talk today is on welcoming the stranger. So my name is Faith Zook, as you've heard, and my family lives in Baltimore City, Maryland. Nathan and I have 7 children, which 3 of them are teenagers, so that's like a whole separate category. But we've lived in Baltimore for 4 years now, and this is our second time to move to Baltimore, so it's a little confusing, but we did live there when we were first married, and then we moved around the country, Tennessee, Wisconsin, and then Washington, D.C. So that was our longest, was in D.C., and we lived there for 14 years. Just so you can get a little perspective as I'm talking of like where we were from. So living in cities was a constant for me ever since I got married. Not before that, but after my marriage. So I also have recently written a book. It came out this past October, and I know a lot of you have read it already, and you don't have to, but I put a box of books on the back table right there, and you're welcome to a copy. It costs $11.95, and I put a bowl right next to it for your convenience. So if you want to buy a copy, you can do it in that, or you can Venmo me or PayPal the money later, whatever suits you. Just speak to me about it if you want to pay a different way. If you're interested, or if you know of someone who would like a copy, go right ahead and help yourself there. So during my days, I stay busy homeschooling. I always tell people that's kind of my full-time job. Anything else I do becomes part-time. So that's my main thing, is homeschooling. I have 6 children right now that are still in schoolwork. Part-time, I play the cello for Johns Hopkins Symphony Orchestra. It's really close to our house. It's like 7 blocks away, so nice. I also teach private cello and piano lessons in my home, and I tutor college students in biology and chemistry, which is what I actually got my degree in, not music. I just love music. My older girls and I also have been babysitting 2 little neighbor girls full-time. They're 1.5 years old, and so we do that Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. So those little girls kind of have become part of our family. We've been doing that for this past year, since January. Okay. So now that you know something about me, we're going to start by talking about strangers. So first of all, let's start with a little bit of a self-evaluation. And this is something that you can kind of think about. So how about if you raise your hand, which I hate raising my hand in public. My husband can tell you that, but we'll just see. So if you don't feel comfortable, you don't have to. But have you ever felt like a stranger somewhere, anywhere? Just rack your mind in the past month. How about that? Has anyone ever felt like a stranger, just sort of a strange person, or you were in a situation where you didn't feel comfortable? Okay. What about in the past week? To think about that. Yes, I would say I have. What about yesterday when you show up here, right? It might feel kind of like a stranger. Where am I? Maybe you've been here before. Raise your hand if you like feeling like a stranger. Who likes that? Does anyone enjoy that uncomfortable, awkward feeling of I don't really belong? Okay, probably not so much. All right, so what about talking to strangers? Who likes talking to strangers? Does anyone enjoy that? Maybe. Some of us like to meet new people, right? Maybe that can be fun. All right, so we can look at strangers as interesting and helpful to learn to know new people, or we can look at them as scary. All right, I'm going to talk from 2 different standpoints here. The first is going to be, we are the strangers, and the second one is going to be, the neighborhood around me is full of strangers. All right, I'm sure you can identify with either one. So let's get started. Sometimes we're the strangers in the neighborhood, and just so we have the same definition of what a stranger is, it's an unfamiliar person. Maybe you've never seen them before, you've never noticed them, or you don't know anything about them. All right, and at times I have felt like the stranger, and it could be caused by mistakes. So let me tell you, I love to talk in stories, so I'm going to start with a story. So this happened while Nathan and I were living in Wisconsin. We were just a young couple. We had our oldest son was just a baby in the stroller. And the small city that we lived in, Wisconsin, was majority white, but they did have a sizable minority of Hispanics and just a few African American residents, just to give you a picture of what it was like. We were out on a walk around town one evening, and we walked by a house where a boy about 10 years old was out playing, and his father was mowing the yard. The boy looked up at us and he began yelling at us, "Go home, you dirty Mexicans! Go away! We don't want you here!" We just stopped mid-step, and I looked over at him, and my husband made some comment to him like, "That's not very nice. You shouldn't say things like that." The father turned off his mower. He let that die, so now it was all quiet. And he said, "What are you saying to my son?" 1,000 thoughts went through our head, like, should we say, well, we're not Mexicans? Why would you even think that? Or should we defend Mexicans? But the main thought was that boy got his racist ideas from somewhere. Looking at the father's glowering face at us, it was not hard to imagine where he got his ideas from. So we gave a pleasant wave and said, oh, we were just answering his questions, and we just kept on walking. Let the father question his son and figure out that he was being judgmental. It's very difficult to reason with the father. When he didn't even hear the conversation, he would probably just defend his son if he knew what was happening. So in that situation, I, a native-born American, was being mistaken for an immigrant. That doesn't feel very good, to be thought of that we're from a distant land and we don't belong. It's like saying you don't belong. I felt like a part of that city. That was my home. And I was being accused of being from somewhere else. We're not even going into all the racism there. We're just talking about feeling like a stranger, right? Okay, a lot of issues there. Another situation that happened where I was yelled at to go home was, see, I have lots of writing here. Hang on, I'll find it. Oh, help us all. Okay, just a minute. Oh, yes, I found it. Hooray. Okay, so this happened just a couple weeks ago, actually. Our family was walking to a friend's birthday party. Oh, yeah, I want to show this one. Sometimes we feel like we're from Shakespearean England, right? We just feel like such strangers. Something about us. We just stick out, maybe. People notice us. So I want you to see this picture that's how we feel sometimes. Okay, let me give you another situation. So a couple weeks ago, our family was walking over to a friend's birthday party, and the friends are from India. They've immigrated pretty recently, the past year. Most of the guests also from India. And we met up with a young couple walking over, and I was like, they're from India? They're probably going to the birthday party. Yes, we talked. They were. And they were pushing their little boy in a stroller. So they began to question me about being Jewish. They don't know much about religion here in the U.S., right? They've arrived recently. I told them my usual answer. I'm a Christian. I'm a Mennonite. Have you heard of the Amish? I finally, begrudgingly asked that one. No, they didn't know any of that. They didn't even know who the Amish were. Jewish, they insisted. We know that's what you are. Why isn't your husband wearing a hat too? I kept trying to convince them otherwise. All of a sudden, a middle-aged white man came biking towards us on his bike, and he was spewing profanities at me. He stopped, he yelled awful things about being Jewish, and said, go back to Israel. Once again, we don't want you here. He said, don't read the news. I don't know. Well, I got him there because I don't read the news. But the Indian couple was so sorry. And we all rushed into the party, but now they were more sure than ever that I was Jewish because the man had just, yelled at me that I was. They were very apologetic at how racist the man was. But I just gave up trying to convince them that I wasn't Jewish because they were convinced of it. And I quietly accepted that. But sometimes I feel like a stranger in my own country. Why am I being told to go back to Israel or back to Mexico? So these things make me feel like I don't belong. The cities I try to make my home, suddenly I'm told are not my home. I'm supposed to go back somewhere else. So that's a little difficult. It can be caused by other people's images of what a Mennonite or Amish or Anabaptist person looks like. Another situation that happened when this was while we were living in D.C., I had been having some dizzy spells a few years ago. It was accompanied with a lot of nausea, and I found out later it was related to my inner ear problems, so I've resolved that now. But I thought I had a stomach virus, and I let it go for a while, and it just wasn't going away. So after a couple weeks of that, I decided I should get up and go into my local DC urgent care. And I made that decision at 4 in the morning. I was feeling so awful when I woke up. I was like, this is miserable. I'm going. So I got dressed in my oldest clothes because, I'm just going to urgent care. Nothing fancy there. And I might throw up on the way. You never know. And Nathan wanted to drive me, but I said, no, we can't leave all the children in the house sleeping by themselves. Stay here. I'm going to drive myself. I'm going to be fine. I'll roll down the window so I can throw up out the window if I need to. So I drove over there. I made it. When I got into a room at urgent care, there was a kindly older African-American nurse. She bustled around, taking my vitals. She kept looking at me funny, though, the whole time. And then she finally had to ask, what religion are you? And I told her my usual, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm a Mennonite. Nothing. She had no clue what a Mennonite was. It's sort of like the Amish. I supplied helpfully. I hated saying those words, but it usually helped clear up some confusion. Now she looked really confused. Well, I've watched these shows about the Amish on TV, but I know you wasn't an Amish lady when you came in because your cap's not white like theirs. Yours is, and she kind of squinted at my covering, which had holes and dents and was certainly not a true white anymore because it was so dirty after years of use. Yours is kind of yellowish, she concluded satisfactorily. So I know you ain't Amish. I was so embarrassed that I was showing up like this, but hey, it is urgent care. So I tried to say something like, well, I didn't dress up for urgent care, but she didn't get it. She just knew that you're the Mennonite of the yellowish coverings. All right, so as I went back home again, sticking my head out the window while a homeless man came up to ask for money, I found myself laughing and sighing about people's impression of me. I didn't get to explain that I did truly have white coverings at home, but they were reserved for church, not an urgent care visit. How strange I must have looked to that nurse. She thought we should all look the same, maybe, Mennonites, Amish. How could I cross that bridge? How could I show people like her that just watch a few shows on TV about Amish that I'm a real person? I'm just like them. So, some difficulties. Oh, this one I have to share with you. This one's hilarious. Oh, here. Okay. This is feeling like another weird stranger after a very strange conversation. So this is also while we were living in D.C. My family and I had stopped in at the Amish Dutch Market, which is out in Germantown, Maryland, for lunch on our way to summer Bible school, where Nathan was teaching at a local Mennonite church out that way. We had left our sidewalks and row houses behind, and we were sitting at a booth in the Amish market. Well, the children and I were sitting there. Nathan had gone up to the chicken counter to buy us these wonderful chicken wings with sauce. An older couple came up to us smiling, and they said, "So, did you sleep in your van last night?" I was kind of taken aback. What? Your vans. You slept in your vans last night? They persisted, waiting for my reply. I tried to fix my hair, thinking about the homeless in our neighborhood in D.C. Do I look like I slept in my car? I asked. Oh, we just thought that's what you all must do, so you don't have to drive back to Pennsylvania every night. The couple continued pleasantly. Oh, suddenly it dawned on me. Oh, you think I'm Amish and that I work at this market. Oh, I don't. Oh, the couple was so pleased. I finally knew what they meant, and they nodded happily. Oh, no, I'm not Amish, and I don't work here, and I actually live in the city, I informed them. And I did not sleep in my car last night, I added for good measure. But they were unfazed and didn't quite believe me. Well, what do the Amish do every night? Do they sleep in their vans? They continued to ask me, thinking I must be the resident expert on the Amish. I actually have no idea, but that's a good question, I said. You're going to have to ask someone who actually works here. After the couple left, I once again was torn between giggles and embarrassment because I was the stranger. They couldn't believe I lived close by. I wasn't a stranger. That was like my home area. I was just another customer like they were, waiting for my chicken. It made me feel self-conscious, though, because they thought I only belonged at that market if I worked there. So situations like this are difficult to deal with because it's sort of the question of how do other people see us? What do they see when they look at us? Do they see someone that they recognize from a TV show or their image of Amish, or maybe they've read Amish books? So that's a difficulty, but let's think about this verse. This is in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 13. These all died in vain, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, and were persuaded of them, and embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. Can we embrace being a stranger? It feels awkward and sometimes really upsetting, but we are strangers. The Bible tells us that we are strangers. We're pilgrims. Is that okay? And can I be comfortable with that uncomfortableness of being a stranger? If I'm not a stranger, that means I'm too comfortable in this earthly kingdom. Where are we really residents of? If people yell at me to go back to Mexico or back to Israel, where am I a resident, though? A heavenly kingdom, right? We're residents of heaven. So we are strangers, we are immigrants, we are pilgrims on this earth. So let's not forget that, and then maybe it will help me not to feel as awkward when someone thinks I am a stranger. Yes, I am a stranger. Okay, that's going to actually tie in the idea of us feeling like an immigrant into the next part of my talk, which is the neighborhood around me is full of strangers, each with their own unique cultures and customs. All right, so I'm sure that you all have neighbors from other countries as well, and I feel our strangeness can sometimes help us to relate better to internationals and immigrants coming into this country because we know what that feels like. to not quite fit in, or maybe we've moved to our communities rather recently and we don't know where everything is either. And we remember what it was like to need help to find the library or recommendations for a grocery store or whatever. So I think it does give us sort of a unique perspective to try to help other neighbors around us. We have neighbors from India who don't eat meat. We have neighbors from Canada who won't come to our church programs because they're Buddhist. We have neighbors who are Jewish and they don't drive their cars on their Sabbath day. Lots and lots of immigrants around us. So let's try to think of ways that we can make sure to make them feel comfortable as well. Okay, another story. And if you read my book, you'll see it's just full of stories, right? That's how I like to teach. So there was an international student that started coming to our church in Baltimore, and she showed up at our Sunday evening Dutch Blitz game night in the park. Amid food and fellowship, she asked a number of us from church to guess what country she was from. Now, we were all just assuming China, but we didn't want to make a stereotype say that. So we just guessed countries around China. Everyone was afraid of guessing China, maybe for fear of putting her in a box. Taiwan? Japan? No. Korea? No. The Philippines? No. Hong Kong? No. My husband pulled out his knowledge of geography. Myanmar? No. Tajikistan? No. She laughed, doubling over in her ability to stump us. We all give up. China, she yelled excitedly. None of you guessed China. We kind of hemmed and hawed around, but we felt a little ridiculous for not even trying China. She was the stranger. She felt like a stranger, but she wanted us to know where she came from. It was important to her. It made her feel good if we could picture the country she was from. So don't be afraid to ask people. Don't be afraid to get to know them. Maybe they want you to know that about them. Our cities are not homogenous. In your community, and you might not live in a city, but your village or your town or your country setting, it's not all the same. Not everyone is the same. They're not all from the same place. This picture of sledding shows you a recent activity that we did with a family from India who had never been sledding before. And they said they wouldn't come with us for the first couple of times when I asked them, but we actually got some snow this last year. So when I asked her again, another time she said she would try it. But they weren't acquainted with snow and sledding. The idea of hurtling down a hill on a sled was not really exciting to them. But anyway, so they agreed to join us and had never been sledding. So that was something that we could expose them to, but they felt like they didn't belong. How many times have I felt that way? I also showed her where the library was and how to sign up for a library card. So these are ways where we can welcome the stranger and make them feel a part of life in our own neighborhood. I don't necessarily always feel at home where I am living either, or in my own neighborhood. But oftentimes international neighbors view me that way. Like they view me as the home American. If they're not yelling at me to go back to Mexico, which that's more the home people that do that. The internationals view me as a real American. So they're going to look to me for advice about what to do and how to conduct themselves and where to go. So some ways that I have found to welcome them is making connections in any way possible. So some ideas are helping out with babysitting. That's what we've been doing recently, as I mentioned, with watching 2 little girls. So that's a great way to reach through to the families as well. And if you or your children have the bandwidth to do that, which I don't even know some days if I do, but it's a great way to impact other families as well, to help with childcare in any way possible. And it could just be a little here or there. But that's a really helpful way for the families. Often international neighbors are away from the grandparents. The families that we babysit for, we're holding them here in this picture, are from Korea and China, the parents are. And so the grandparents are not in the U.S. So it's a great way to help when they don't really have family nearby that can do some of the childcare. So please look around for ways to help out people like that who don't have the network that we all have, right, with family. And I already mentioned telling them where any necessities are located is really helpful to forging a bridge and helping that stranger to feel like a home person. Walking dogs for them, feeding their cats. A lot of our teenagers are doing things like this, and of course mowing their yards. Another great way to make a bridge is having them for supper. And this can be a little tricky because you have to find out what foods they're allowed to have or not allowed to have. I've had one Jewish neighbor tell me, just serve something that has no meat. Just make it be cheese, because she said it's too complicated to try to figure out the kosher laws for you and dishes and all that. She said, just serve a cheese dish. So that's what we did when we had them over. So just kind of finding out like what would work well for them. Another thing that we've been doing is Christmas caroling. And we did it this past year with only a small group of us, just our own family, and 2 single ladies came and helped us. Three single ladies came and helped. And that's all. So it was a very small group, but the neighbors really loved it. And not just the international neighbors. International neighbors are like, what's this? And what are you doing? But the ones from the U.S. were crying, saying, it's been like 40 years since anyone came around and Christmas caroled for me. So even if you can't pull your whole church on it, they'll think it's neat if just your family sings for them. Just you and a few friends. Or if you're single, yeah, just get some of your friends together, knock on the doors, and wait for them to come and sing just for them. It's so special. It's a really special time. It's vulnerable, and you feel awkward in it. It's only me and my voice between you, right? It's a little awkward, but just enjoy that and embrace that. And I think you'll find that people are so blessed, even just by the Christmas caroling. Oh, here's a picture of one of the little girls that we watch. It's kind of in the messy house. Oh, yeah, and there you see us with 3. Our neighbors across the street found out that we are supposedly running an in-home daycare and asked if we would also watch their son. So we've been doing him on Wednesdays as well. But this is the verse that kind of goes with it. But the stranger that dwelleth with you shall be unto you as one born among you, and thou shalt love him as thyself. For ye were strangers in the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God, Leviticus 19:34. So you were strangers once, weren't you? We're thinking back now to some of my stories, where I felt like a stranger. I felt like, the yellowish covering Mennonite or whatever. So you were a stranger, so you know what it's like to be a stranger. So think about the strangers that are dwelling with you. They shall be unto you as one born among you. So help them to feel welcome, your neighbors. And it doesn't just have to be internationals. It can be homebody Americans. They sometimes feel like strangers too. Let them feel welcome in your company. Let them feel welcome in your families or out in your neighborhoods as you're doing things together, going to libraries or meeting up for coffee or whatever you do with your neighbors. So love him as thyself. So I love this verse because it's reminding us that we are immigrants from a heavenly city. So we have such a unique bond with foreign immigrants into America. You know what it's like to feel like the stranger. So you are equipped. You have all the tools you need to welcome the outsiders. And even if they look like they are just typical Americans, they might sometimes still feel like they don't have friends. Some of this with being a stranger has to do with not having an extensive network of friends and family. I don't know if you've noticed it, but it seems to me that loneliness has really been on the rise. So even if it's a home person who seems like, oh yeah, they probably have it all together, I don't want to bother them, they might actually just be really lonely. So make sure that we're helping to provide that for them. Sometimes we talk about that at church, like the extensive blessing that we have in each other. And a lot of people just don't have that. They have no idea what it's like if they have trials and trouble to have a safety net to fall back on. We just had a lady over on Sunday, a single mom, who is trying to make it, and she just lost her job. And she has no income right now, and she's like $12,000 in debt at this point on credit cards, and she doesn't know if she'll get another job. And she's like, what am I going to do? How am I going to make it? She doesn't have a network. Her family, she doesn't have connections with, and they basically have disowned her after she got pregnant and wasn't married. So what does she do? Where does she turn to? And I just felt like, she looked at me and said, you all would just have people to rely on if anything happens, but she doesn't. She doesn't have that. So I think we need to remember that a lot of people feel like they are lonely and they need connections. All right, now we're going to get on to the next thing, which I kind of added in. It could step on a lot of toes because it's called strangers in the church. Now, this gets a little more touchy because we can all agree upon strangers in the neighborhood, right? Strangers in the church. A little bit more tricky. Let's talk about the times that we feel like strangers in the church. And don't worry, we're going to relate this back to church planting. So, since my husband's a pastor, I get to visit around to a lot of different churches and kind of see like what the culture is or the vibe. How welcome do I feel there? And as you know, they're kind of all over the map. I mean, some churches are really friendly and welcoming and others not so much. So I'll share a few stories, but I'm not going to give specifics if it's something negative so that the church can't recognize themselves, because it could be any church, right? Could be anywhere. Could be our own church. So sometimes there's many friendly churches with welcoming faces and a lot of home people that line up to talk to me. All right, so now I have my story on that one. Yes, we can leave it on this slide. 7. Okay. Recently, this past spring, we went to a Church of the Brethren. So it's part of the break-off of Brethren Alive. This is going to be a positive story because I'm telling you what church it is. A break-off of the Brethren Alive churches. So those are the conservative Church of the Brethren. It's near Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. Definitely recommend visiting there. This is one of the friendliest churches I've ever been at. The women kind of made a line to talk to me, and it wasn't a formal line. It wasn't like they talked about it. It was kind of just, they were just all there in front of me, and they took turns. Some of them were be talking, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going too long. She wanted to say hi to you. So they kind of were just giving way to each other. They included me in all their important, like their private conversations they were having. They would just pull me right in. They told me their struggles. One lady was crying about different things with child training, asking me questions about my life. Just such a wonderful weekend spent with welcoming believers. They actually seemed to care about our family. They were glad we were there. I didn't feel like a stranger in their midst. I felt like one of them. It was like I was part of their church just for that weekend. You know, a church like that, it makes you want to join it. It makes you want to be there. As we were driving away, my husband said to me, if anything ever happens to our church, we're going to go drive over there and go to that church. Like, that'll be our church home. Not that we don't like our church. We're just saying, you know, what if it all goes kaput? So it's so pleasant and refreshing and encouraging to visit a church like that. I think you all know what I mean. Let's pray that your church is like that as well. And that's what we're going to get to next. So what about an unfriendly church where, okay, these are not unfriendly people. These are wonderful. We'll just look at our backs right now. This is a picture of our church. What about an unfriendly church where their faces are turned away and only other visitors welcome me? You know, I might have a good conversation and I found out it's another visitor. So I'll try to do this one in a way that you can't tell what church this is. But this is also a true story. So there was a large church we went to recently, and this often can happen in really big churches too. Not necessarily. Where Nathan was bringing the morning and the evening sermon. So after the morning service, I began talking to the young woman seated next to me, and I found out that she was a visitor from Indiana. That was nice because I grew up in Ohio, so we talked about common connections, maybe some people I knew in Indiana, our children, her family's trip, like the family reunion she was going to. It was a great conversation. Took up most of the visiting time, you know, just time to like run and use the bathroom, and then it was time to go down for the lunch in the basement fellowship hall. At the basement hall, I think I sat with my son on the one side to help him feed, and then the men were very friendly to talk to Nathan a lot, so I didn't really think about it if the women were talking to me or not. It didn't really occur to me. We had food to eat, so it wasn't really a big deal. Then for the afternoon, we went over to the pastor's house for the afternoon to rest, and we had a nice time there with them, and they gave us supper at their house, and then we went back to church for the evening service. I have to tell you all those repetitive details just so you understand the whole setting here. Okay, so now the evening service was over, and no women came up and talked to me. Now, we always say, do I talk to anybody? That's what Nathan usually asks me as we're driving away from church. Well, did you talk to anyone? Did you try? Okay, so I went up to some women who were talking in the bench in front of me, and they were talking about something with a meal and how to make some complicated dessert or something. So I tried to kind of join in, but it was not successful. They didn't really seem to want to have me be part of that conversation, so I just kind of wandered away from that. I mean, they seemed kind of caught up in it. Then I saw the pastor's wife, and she was way up at the front of the church. And I thought, oh, I could go up and tell her thank you, right? That's good. Tell her thank you for the good supper in the afternoon. So I marched resolutely up that aisle. Now, she was talking to another woman up there who was facing me. So the friend saw me coming first. And she kind of backed up a few steps, and her whole face turned red, and she looked a little bit embarrassed. The pastor's wife quickly turned around to see who was coming up the aisle. And when she saw it was me, she looked a little bit confused, and she said apologetically, "Oh, sorry, we were just talking about you." About me? Now I was the one confused. "Oh, yes, my friend here had a few questions about you, and since you were at our house earlier, she thought maybe I would know the answers to her questions." Well, I didn't know what to say. They looked sort of embarrassed and caught out. The friend had backed away now and she was not looking at me at all. No problem, I said with false enthusiasm. I was just coming up to tell you thank you so much for having us over for the afternoon the supper. Oh, yes, it was so fun to have you too, she responded nicely. Well, carry on then. I waved my hand randomly towards the two of them. I'm so sorry to have interrupted you. And I retreated quickly to the back of the church, where I just talked to my daughters and a few youth girls, still looking around occasionally to see if there was any ladies by themselves or somebody to talk to or say hi to. No, nobody. Nathan still had a crowd of men around him, so I went and used the bathroom, and then I came back. He still had a crowd of men around him, so I sighed. Maybe it was time to go sit in the van now. I gathered up all my things and took the youngest children out with me, and we went out to sit in the van. And after a while, we sent in some teenage messengers to tell Nathan that we were about ready to go, and I was feeling awkward standing around in that church all by myself. Nathan came out glowing with all these great conversations that he had, while I laughed wryly about how these church ladies want to talk about me, but not to me. Okay, frustrating, right? I don't know if any of you have ever had experiences like that, but I sort of want to guess you have, or at least it doesn't sound too far off, right? Okay, so what about the church around me? It is also full of strangers. Are Anabaptist churches all homogenous cultures? No! Everybody feels like they don't belong sometimes. That's the one thing I have realized, actually. So it's important to welcome everybody who steps through our church doors. Visitors from the community might come to our churches and wonder if they really can fit in, because we all look, oh, you look so much the same. But do we welcome them? Do we go and talk to them? Or do we just talk about them? Well, who do you think that is? And who did they come with? And who are they friends with? How did they find out about our church? What's the connection? Okay, I'm just curious. What's my next slide? Oh, it is. Okay. Then we'll sit on this one. So, another story. Find that one. Oh, sorry, my note's in a bit of a discombobulation. Here we go. Okay. A single man came to visit our church in Baltimore City a couple years ago. This just to show you that our church has not arrived either. He was looking for a conservative, Bible-believing church, and he'd been recommended to come try ours. But the only people who talked to him after that service were Nathan and I and our older sons. He said some of the others didn't even make eye contact with him. He said if our family had not talked to him, he would never have come back. As it is, he's been coming ever since. He just joined our church recently as a member. We need people to welcome others, making them feel like less of a stranger, more like a welcome guest. Come on in. We need that. I just think that is it's almost the most important thing about church planning, is when someone does come in, how are they treated? They're going to remember that, and that's going to mean a lot more to them than if we talk to them about Christ on the street. If they can come into our church doors and we make them feel like part of us, that's going to mean a lot. Okay, how about this? When Nathan and I lived in Tennessee, so back then we were just a young couple with no children, we visited around a lot of local churches on Sunday evenings because our Anabaptist church had no Sunday evening services. Don't worry, we weren't missing our church. We found ourselves in a local Baptist church one Sunday evening, and we did enjoy the sermon, but after the service, the only person who talked to us was the pastor. He welcomed us and told us to feel free to come back, but no one else even looked at us. They just all ran out the door as soon as the service was done. They didn't even talk to each other. And the pastor, he kind of has to talk to us, right? I mean, that's his job. That's what he's paid to do. So we just didn't feel welcome there. And we thought, oh, let's not go back. But then later on the next month, we saw they were having a visiting preacher and looked like a really interesting topic. It was about welcoming visitors. So we decided we'd go back, give them one more try. So the visiting pastor, talked all about making visitors feel welcome, make sure you talk to the visitors. And we were like, yeah, you don't realize that, but this church really needs to hear that. But I guess we were the only visitors there that evening. I didn't know. But after the service was over, the church people sort of made this line down the aisle. We were on the way back bench, and they all shook our hands, and they said, welcome to our church, some version of that, as they kept walking out the door. So it was sort of like they were so focused on the shaking hand that they would start shaking, welcome, and they'd keep walking, okay? So we're sort of like moving our hands along, oh, and the next one here, oh, welcome, and there they go out the door, another welcome. And it's like that, like we were like this receiving line of run to the door as fast as you can. But they were doing their duty, they were welcoming us, and they were shaking our hands, so our hands kept moving along with that. They were obeying the message, but they were hurrying out to whatever evening plan they had to get out that door. Oh, needless to say, we never went back to that church again. It showed us Are you putting on a welcome show just to do your duty? Or are you actually glad that visitor is there? Just saying welcome isn't enough. We need to actually be truly eager to see them, not eager to leave to go do something else. Another thing that visitors pick up on is how eager the church people are to talk to each other. So if we can stand around and fellowship with each other, that shows a beautiful, loving attitude, and they want that. They want that network and that caring and sharing time. So that's going to mean a lot as well to visitors. All right, so let's think about some ways that we can do that when somebody comes into our church. And don't feel like that I have this all together, because I don't. There's so many times when I mess up or I say something offensive to someone. That's more likely the case. But just, some ideas are making eye contact with them. Like if you look anywhere but at them, it sort of signals that you don't really want them there either. Speaking directly to the person. Don't just ask around. We love to do that, don't we? We love to ask around and find out who they are. It's sort of nice to know that. And that's okay if you do that first before going to them, so you have something a little more to say to them. Oh, I hear you are so-and-so and you're a friend of Teresa who invited you here today. Or, that's okay. It's okay to find out a little, but then go to the person, right? So if that lady who went to the pastor's wife to talk about me had then come to me and said, oh, I hear you live in Baltimore and I was just there to visit recently, and what can you tell me about that? That's totally different. If you're using it as a jumping board to get to a conversation, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with talking about them if you're getting helpful information that will sort of enlarge your conversation and enlighten you and give you something to talk about with them. But don't let it end with just talking about them, right? So speaking directly to them. Maybe shaking their hand, telling them where the bathroom is, where can they get a drink, ideas on where they could sit when they first come in. We have something called greeters at our church, which is set up that they can shake people's hands when they come in. But often I found that the formal greeters don't do any more than that. It's not their fault. It's just they sort of want to stay at the door so they can see more people coming in. So we sort of like to sit near the back so we can kind of keep an eye on things. And if we see someone come in, come in and who are you? Come on and sit in this bench. Maybe you want to sit in the back row. We're not going to usher them way up front, right? So just like giving them ideas of where they can sit or finding out who they are. So it's kind of nice to keep an eye on that. And maybe after church, trying to get into a real conversation, like get a little beyond just who are you and where do you come from. Exchanging text, phone numbers with them so that you can stay in touch. Inviting them to meal. If there's no food at the church that day, then they should be invited as well to come over to your house maybe, unless there's a hostess schedule set up for that. If your church has hostess schedules, it's sort of nice, I know for me as a visitor, to know that that person wanted us though too. It's not just like, oh, okay, I'm the hostess for the day and I did my job. And by the way, I stayed up late last night, so I didn't have time to prepare much food, but I have some cheese downstairs in the basement if you want to come down with me. We've had some meals like that, and you can tell they don't really care. They're sort of irritated. It's even their turn. Yeah, we got to get this out of the way. Twice a year, I have to be the hostess. Okay, that's no fun either. So maybe just like if you have a hostess schedule, that they at least act like they want to host the visitors would be pleasant, right? And following up with visitors later. And here's the Bible verse that goes along with this part is, wherefore receive ye one another, as Christ also received us to the glory of God, Romans 15:7. So I think it's important to receive the unbelievers and other church folks as Christ received us, which is undying love and care. Can we show that to others around us at church who come into our church doors or are in our neighborhoods? As Christ received us, it's a huge, high task. I don't know if I can do that, but we have to try to receive ye one another. So welcoming others in our neighborhoods and churches, it's sort of like, I would encourage you to take personal responsibility about it and don't be thinking that somebody else will do it, right? If you don't welcome that visitor or that stranger, they might never come back again because everyone might do that. They might just talk about them and expect that the visitor has a friend or a connection and no one talks to them. So don't expect others to do it. You don't realize the huge impact you can have if you just welcome a stranger. It doesn't seem like much, but it's very important in God's kingdom. So when we lived in D.C., there was a man who visited our church. I remember that day he came in. He was wearing shorts and a T-shirt, and he sat through the whole service, and we didn't know him. I didn't know who he was. But After church, Nathan and I stood and talked to him. And the others at church all assumed that he was our guest because we were the only ones talking to him. He wasn't. I didn't know him. But he started coming back again and again and again. He eventually became pastor of that church. He was engaged at the time. We later met his girlfriend. As soon as he left, though, that day, all the church people gathered around. Well, who was he? Who is your friend? We're like, he wasn't our friend. He's just a guy from the neighborhood. And we talked to him. So they had a lot of questions after he left. But I feel like if we just expect that others will talk to the visitors, no one will do it. So take personal responsibility. And if there's 10 of you that want to talk to the visitor, great. I love it when I go to church and there's like ladies all around. You just feel like, oh, they all want to talk to me. That's okay. If a lot of you had the same idea, just go in and that person will feel very welcomed. If you're too eager to leave and you just want to do your duty, hello, okay, goodbye, hope you enjoy your Sunday, then it's going to come across the visitors that you didn't really want them there. I think that is very key when you're church playing. And I think you all know this, and I'm sure the very fact that you're here this weekend, you have welcoming churches. I know that. But can we recognize the importance of it too and just be reminded today? Because I know you're all doing a great job at it. Just like you feel like a stranger, others around you feel like strangers. And you know what that feels like. So try to break through that wall of uncomfortableness and awkwardness. Don't let the strangeness get in your way emotionally or mentally as you try to reach out to someone else. Ask questions of them. Seek understanding of who they are or where they come from. We don't want to be nosy. We don't want them to think we're like, interrogators or something, going to turn them in to police. I mean, we've had undocumented immigrants coming into our church, and we don't want them to think that we're going to turn them in or something like that. But we do want to be friendly and be a safe refuge for them. So spread God's big welcome. That's why I love this verse. If Christ also received us to the glory of God, wherefore receive ye one another. So that's God's big welcome that he has for us. It means so much to people. Like I say, in this lonely, lonely time that we're living in, just to spread the word about God's welcome.